こんにちは。私の名前は小范です。今朝我讲的是呢，我们阿母，这是阿拉妈，这是阿拉舅妈，这是阿拉阿公，这是阿拉阿母，这是我的猫。My audience don't understand English, so I'm going to translate them for learning the speech. The topic I'm going to talk about today is how to learn languages. I can personally speak 5 languages, and I'm a tutor in a language course in Rutgers. And I constantly help my American friend how to learn Chinese and help my Chinese friend learn English and Japanese. So I'm going to talk about some helpful tips for learning languages. I read the class survey, so more than half of us have international background. So I think most of you have the experience of learning languages. And even though you don't learn a language in school, it's also helpful for you in job candidate or even for your daily life. So it's accepted by most of linguists and the students who learn languages and teachers who teach languages. Learning languages is basically 4 basic skills, which is listening, reading, speaking, and writing. So learning the proper way of meaningful input and output will be very helpful when learning languages. It's also accepted by the most popular language tests in the world. I picked some tests you might be familiar with, such as TOEFL, ELTE test for Spanish, and HSK test for Chinese. Those are all tests that looking for candidates speaking, reading, writing, and listening skills. So I'm going to talk about input first. I know a very famous linguist called Steve Hockman. One of his speech, he said that input is the most important thing when you are learning languages because it is the way you know how the language works. It's the way you put a language into your brain. So when we are learning languages, a language, we spend most of our time memorizing vocabulary and the grammars. For vocabulary, how can we memorize vocabulary faster? In my high school, we memorized about 350 vocabulary on average every day. And how can we do that? I have 2 specific tips for that. Firstly is to put the vocabulary into the situation, into the daily life scenario. For example, when you are learning vocabulary about food, you can do that when you are eating your meal. For example, when I was learning Japanese, I searched the word for fish when I'm eating a fish. So I know the word for fish is sakana, and every time I look at a fish, I will remind me in my brain that the word for fish is sakana, and I do that over and over again, and it's easy for me to retrieve that word when I want to use the word sakana. And the second way is through affects. For example, when you are trying to memorize the word antisocial, and while you already know what the word social means, you only have to know what does anti means. And when you know anti means against to something, you can simply understand what does antisocial means, and also you can know most of the words start with anti, such as antibiotics. Another thing we put a lot of effort in when we are learning languages is grammar. Most people just go through textbook and memorize everything, but it's going to be so boring and low efficient because you don't know how does that work just in the textbook context. I found a really great way to learn grammar is through reading. When you are reading a sentence with the grammar you learn, you will be like, oh, I learned that before. That's how it works, and it's going to be easier next time when you are trying to use that grammar. I think the best way of output of a language is to talk with people in that language, especially with native speakers, because it is a great opportunity for you to integrate with what you have learned through the input. You can integrate the vocabulary and the grammar you have learned and make it a full sentence. It's a great way for you to practice. Also, the native speaker can correct your language, so you know what you have done wrong and how can you improve. And also, it is a great way for you to understand the logic behind the language. So language is not simply a grammar and vocabulary. It's most importantly the logic. So my advice is don't be afraid. You might be afraid that you could sound silly if you are not perfect in the pronunciation. But trust me, almost everyone I know don't make fun of me because my English is not perfect. They are very open and willing to help. Although knowing how to meaningfully input and output can make it very efficient when learning a language, but it is not enough because learning a language is a long-term process. You need to practice it. And I think interest and passion is very important during that process. Personally, I think current media is very helpful for you to practice and be interested in that language. Another speech I watched by Steve Kaufman, he said that current media make language learning much more easier than 50 years ago because of there's so many like stream talk or TV shows or like TV dramas online, so you can simply have access to native speakers. Like for me, I don't have many foreigner living the place I live when I was learning English, so watching TV drama would be a great way for me to learn how they speak, how they like even their body languages. It's great for me to imitate their tone. So I think it is the best way and my favorite way to learn a language. It is also very fun. It's much fun than like just reading a textbook and memorizing vocabularies. So learning a language have to be the combination of both input and output, but it can be much easier thanks to our modern technology, thanks to all these TV dramas and movies or TV shows and all other great technologies. Learning a language have to be a long-term process. You have to practice, but the process can be much less painful than you thought it could be. It's only my way. I think there's much other ways you can learn a language. I hope you all success if you want to try a new language. Thank you for watching.